Hey folks, KR King of D&D Homebrew. Today's video is a combination of my campaign diary that I've been doing on the live campaign I've been running and my weekly video. And the reason is we had to cancel this week's session. The players had too many holiday obligations. We couldn't reschedule. And I wanted to talk about what you should do when you have to cancel a session. Because the thing about missing a session, especially depending on how often you meet, is it can really slow momentum, slow interest in your campaign. And so this is about ways that you can sort of have the players be invested in your campaign, have some things happen, even though you're not playing. Now, one of the things is you really do want to try to avoid missing sessions so that if you have one or maybe two players, depending on how many players you have in the group, to just run, without them, have them disappear, whatever, and reappear, or if you want, have them be run by the other players. And in fact, we had to do that 2 sessions ago. One of the players said that he wasn't going to make it from the very beginning. We had ended in the middle of a battle, so he had to be in there, that he was taken out. It's not ideal, but it's better than missing a session. Because first and foremost, if you can play, play. So when I was out of town the next week, we decided to play over the internet remotely. You can see the campaign diary on that, number 4. Again, it went okay. We had some glitches, but basically we got to play the game, advance the storyline. The players had a good time. But then we ran into this issue. We simply could not reschedule. No one could get together during the week, so we had to cancel. So I count 3 determining factors in terms of how you're going to react to missing a session, which is how often do you play? How much warning did you receive such that when you realized, oh, we're not going to play the next session? And then finally, where did the group end the session before you had to cancel it? And each of these factors, as always, intersects and whatnot in determining how much you should do to compensate for that missing session. Now, I'm running in a weekly game such that, the players aren't going to forget that much. If you miss a session, you really don't have to do anything, really. They're going to remember the storylines, where they were when they ended and whatnot, as opposed to if you run just every other week or once a month, when you lose a session. That's a lot of time that goes by. You're going to want to do some additional things just to keep that interest going. But here's the thing. You don't want to just say nothing. I think you should send either an email, a group email, or if you have a group Facebook page, and just remind the players a day before or the day of, hey, we're not meeting this week. We canceled. So that nobody, if somebody shows up at the game store or at your house, where they're going to be irritated. Talk about a momentum killer. So you want to just make sure everyone remembers we're not playing this week. But I would also provide a little incentive in this email by providing a recap of the last session, what occurred, where the players left off. At the beginning of every session, I let the players recap. I start by just saying, here's where you were and this is where we ended. But then the players kind of do a recap of the session, talk about what happened. But now in this email, you've got it in a textual form. They can all look at it. They see it during the week, a reminder of this is what happened. These are the goals. This is the storyline. And it's almost as though you're not playing, obviously, but you're reminded of the game. It just gives a little bit of that incentive. The other thing that it shows is you have, the commitment to this game to put together this email, to remind them, to talk about it. You're excited about the group and the campaign, and that'll give them a little more incentive to be excited as well. But here's the thing, if you're running, every other week or once a month, you're going to want to do a little more, activity, a little more commitment here by you and perhaps the players just to keep that momentum going, because, every other week, that's a whole month off, 2 months with a once a month campaign. Now, a little side note here, this is one of the reasons that I recommend, if you can, to play once a week. It's sort of like having a golf league, a bowling league or something. Those meet every week. That's a social activity that people commit to every week. And if you can only make it, once every other week, and I get it, people have schedules. You may say, we can only run every other week or whatever, or once a month. But I'm like, if you can only run once a month, that's all you can commit to. Maybe you do a West March style campaign, or a one-shot campaign or something online, because you really want that commitment from your players. The other thing is to just make sure that people are flexible such that if everybody says, oh my gosh, I've got a commitment here on this upcoming Tuesday, hey, can we switch to Monday? Can we switch to Wednesday? If players can only play on one night and you have 1, 2, or 3, half the party's missing, then you're going to have to reschedule. So you want to think that through when you're creating. Like I said, once a week is great. But having said that, I ran a once a month campaign for 8 years. And here's the thing. We were religious about making sure we got together that Saturday. Now, we met for an entire day on Saturday, but we made sure that we would meet on that Saturday, or if one player was missing, then we kept them in the game. We'd run their player, but we kept running. And if it turned out that everybody couldn't make some week, we would schedule the Saturday before, the Saturday after. Sometimes we scheduled on Sunday, whatever it took, because we did not want to break that chain of once a month meeting and playing the game. So as I said, at minimum, you want to have an email that says, hey, we're missing this week, and a little recap. And then you want to do some more, I think, if you're, meeting less often. But this dovetails into the question of where the group ended the session. I have a whole video, I'll put a link up here, about how to end sessions. But suffice to say, if the group ended in the middle of a battle, such that you have to take a picture of where the figures are or whatever, there's not a lot that's going to happen between the sessions if you miss one, because it's basically a round, 6 seconds. So in that case, you're just going to have to just start it up again. But if you've ended the session with the players in a safe place or back in town or between storylines, this gives you a lot more room to create some stuff, some information or activities or what they could do that doesn't, interrupt the momentum of your game. Because here's the thing, you can say a day or a week or whatever, you don't have any, if you don't have any ticking clock storylines going on, such that they can do downtime activities, spell research, or, anything they're doing related to their character class. They can go purchase things or whatever. You can have NPCs provide information. They hear about something on the third day sitting in the town at the tavern or this or that, create new storylines. And what you do is you send that information out, perhaps along with the email that says, hey, we're not playing this week, the recap, and then some news comes into town of this, or player X wanted to, do some research here or whatever, those downtime activities. And then the players can respond to that information, ask questions, make sure it's a group email and a group response. Because one of the things you don't want to do is start running players individually such that they're doing activities and you're going back and forth, whether it's online or, even by email or whatever, and they're getting, rewards or inspiration or experience. You don't want to do that. You want to do this all stuff as a group. You want to play as a cohesive group when you meet, in real life or when you meet online. So you can have a little bit of, the players asking questions and doing stuff offline in that week off or 2 weeks off or whatever with information you give, or I want to buy this and they want to haggle or something. You can do that, but make sure it's always a group email. Everyone should be involved or at least see what's going on in these activities. If the player wants to do some secret thing or something like that, you know what? You can talk about that, but have the resolution say, okay, I'll look into that. You want to do this and that. And then come back the next session and resolve that, which dovetails into how much advance warning you get. If you meet once a month and you are in the middle of a battle and suddenly you find out later, 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later, hey, we realize our schedules aren't working. We can't meet that week. What are you going to do? Well, what you might want to try to do, as I said, is reschedule. If you literally have so many players, see if you've got a month there. See if you can figure out a way to reschedule, because you don't want to miss 2 months between your sessions. But if there's just no way we can meet, whether it's, once every 2 weeks or the month or whatever, make sure that you end the session such that you can do those activities that I mentioned, that you can sort of run. You're going back and forth as a group, or you're doing stuff. Depending on your interest in this, you don't want to get too involved, but just to keep things going. So end the session. They're in a safe place. They're between a storyline. And even if you have to end it a little early, or if the place you're playing allows it, if you can go a little bit later that session before the canceled one, such that you're in a place where it makes sense to have the sort of information, the sort of activities, downtime activities or whatever that I mentioned. Okay, so what did I do when I was forced to cancel my live play weekly session? Well, first of all, we had advance notice. We had all discussed we could not meet the day after Christmas, and then it became obvious, this was 2 weeks before, that people simply weren't going to be able to connect with their schedules during that week, so we decided to cancel. But then something came up, as always in D&D, in which a player had this ring. He was possessed by it. He went into this deep gnome temple/tomb. Players followed. They had some battles. and they ended the session trapped in this tomb. The power of this ring, even though they neutralized it, the power of the ring was holding this door fast, and they realized they were going to have to explore this complex and either find out a new way out of this place or figure out a way to neutralize the power of the ring. And they were totally out of spells and very low on hit points. So I did 4 things. First of all, the Light Domain Cleric got a hold of this ring from the gnomes. It said, I'm holding on to this. He resisted its charm effects. And in the process, he realized it was using its power to hold this door shut. And he just had an intuition, as it were, that they could probably, putting up guard shifts, they could probably rest the night, at least take that chance, such that they could get their hit points and get their spells refreshed. So that's how we ended it. In a second, I sent out a message reminding everyone, hey, we're not running this week, and giving a little recap of exactly where they were. And then I added the fact that 4 of the players had accumulated enough experience during the runs before this, such that they could be 3rd level, and another player, the wizard, had accumulated enough, more than enough, to get to 2nd level. And so I was going to allow them to level up. They would take the long rest, they'd come up, and they would have a level. Now, I don't usually do this, especially at a 3rd level where you're taking specializations, arcane traditions, this sort of thing. But here's the thing. It was a unique situation. I hadn't planned on going into this temple. And the thing was, this temple's a little deadly. I just knew it would be funner for both me and the players if they were 3rd and 2nd level. So I made an executive decision. And then finally, I gave each player a 1-page PDF of a dream that they had during that long rest that relates to their predicament inside the tomb. Now, a lot of GMs, I can already hear you out there, oh, dreams, I hate, I never use dreams. Dreams are stupid, whatever. I understand that. And in fact, I have a video that I will link to here talking about how to use dreams, when you should use them. Suffice to say, you should use them very sparingly, and any information that relates to anything outside of the player's mental thought processes must be motivated by some force in the external world. Because in real life, dreams are just merely thoughts tumbling in our head. They don't come from loved ones, trying to communicate with us or anything. You might believe that, but I don't think it's the case. But in a fantasy world, you can have dreams coming from some magic force. And in fact, that's what's happening in this temple tomb. So what I did was I connected these player dreams with their backgrounds, their race and class, the events that led up to them getting there. And if you've listened to the diary, there's all sorts of, machinations that went on to get them into this predicament. And then some clues that relate to not necessarily advantages or how to beat things or whatever, the monsters or the puzzles that they'll meet here, but in terms of the storyline of this place and how they can position themselves or how they can think about this when they see the puzzles, when they see the monsters, that will give them just a little bit of an edge. I don't need to give them too much, because what I'm doing is I'm creating a individualized storyline for each of these players during this off week. Again, as though we were playing. It's new stuff. It's new information. It's something that adds to, their current situation when we start the game again. And I'll tell you what those dreams were and how my players reacted to them and, got their way through the temple tomb, if they did, in next week's campaign diary. But until then, if you like what you've seen, please subscribe to my channel. I'm always looking for more. Leave some comments. Tell me what you've done when you had to cancel a session and, whatever else comes to your mind. But most importantly, as always, keep playing D&D and tell somebody else about it.